Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are going to take a look at the next to last of these very first wave of Beasts of the Mesozoic Ceratopsian Series figures. This is the Zuniceratops, and you can see a really nice image as always right here on the front of the box. The artwork that is included with these figures is next level, I will say that for sure. And then up here at the top, Beast of the Mesozoic Ceratopsian Series, 1/18th scale figure, and then here on the back, a little checklist, as always, of some of the other figures included in the very first wave. Not all, but just a few. And then we have a sneak peek of the card that is included. Zuniceratops up here at the top as far as the species name, and some information on the species down here. So, without further ado, let's open this up and take a look at this really cool Ceratopsian figure. So straight away we have the card that is included, as well as the tail assembly instructions like we always have. But once again, that artwork is gorgeous, and I love that the actual artwork of the figures here always includes the same paint scheme and everything, looking just like the actual figure that you receive. Just absolutely awesome work continuously as far as the overall package goes when it comes to both the figure, the artwork, the cards. Everything is just amazing. And here on the back you can see a really cool image of the actual figure itself, as well as some information on the species. Pretty much your standard card, but absolutely awesome. And then here is our Zuniceratops itself, and I must say it is extremely appealing looking, and this is actually the very first figure I'm having entered into my collection of this species, so that's something that the Beast of the Mesozoic line is good for, is entering in some pretty obscure species at times into collections that previously most people don't have an opportunity to own or include in their collection. And this is definitely the very first figure of this species that I have, and this is gorgeous as always. A really beautiful looking Ceratopsian figure. This is also the smallest one in the line that I have in my collection currently from the first wave. It's definitely the smallest as far as the first wave goes, probably the entire series. So let's go ahead and get a closer look at it right now. So looking up here at the head sculpt, straight away there is a ton of color variation included on this figure, and I think there might be more color included on the head sculpt of this Ceratopsian than potentially any of the other figures in the entire series, which is just crazy that there's so much color variation included, but also a lot of really nice paintwork applied, and it all really does look quite natural. Again, just like I've said pretty much this entire time, I think it looks great. You could see just many different variations of, like, here's a brown, which the entire like beak area and everything is a nice brown. There's a little bit of an alternate brown included in there too, but you can see that brown kind of transitions over to here, and then we have like a black, then we have some red, then we have some dark blue, then we have some red. We also have a mixture of like an off-white and a little mixture of yellow included. Then we have some brown, some blue, some red, a little off-white, some blue. Like, it's just continuous the entire way through. And there are so many tones of color included. It is really quite the sight to behold, I will say. But detail-wise, you can see it looks great. Really nicely sculpted nostril right there. Beautiful scale detail up here on the face of the Zuniceratops as well. The detail around the eye is fantastic. You can see a beautifully painted eye with a really nice black pupil. Very beautifully glossed also, giving it that extremely realistic eye shine. That's one thing that I think these Beasts of the Mesozoic figures always strive for, is realism, and they continuously do a good job in that aspect. Moving up here into the frill, you can see some really nice difference as far as like reddish colorations, yellows, oranges, all really beautifully mixed together, and it looks extremely flashy and extremely nice. Very, very appealing look, I think, for the frill of this Ceratopsian. I think it looks great, and the actual application of the paint looks really good as well. Nice transitioning back and forth between all of those colors. You can really pick up on how beautiful that scale detail is up here in the lighter areas of the body also. Really, really nicely done. And another aspect of this figure that I'm actually a big fan of are the horns you can see right here. Because just like a few of them, like the Styracosaurus, it has a really nice weathering to them. Lots of different tones of color, looking extremely, extremely realistic. And I love when they do this with the horns on these Beasts of the Mesozoic figures, because I really feel like it just amps the realism of the figures up quite a bit, and it looks great here on this one. And in fact, the horns of this one might actually be my favorite out of any of the ones that we've seen so far, so that just shows you how good the horns on the Zuniceratops figure is. Looking at the opposing side of the head, it also looks great. Again, no sloppiness as far as that paint application goes. Beautifully painted eyes on both sides. the quality control, I feel like, on these figures is really, really good, because I have yet to really see any type of significant sloppiness or anything like that. Like, you never see an eye missing the mark or just horribly sloppy paint on any of these figures, which, as usual, shows just how much David Silva invests into these figures and how perfect they pretty much have to be to actually get released. So, again, kudos to David Silva for being such an awesome guy to care as much as he does about his product and the fans that purchase the product. But you can see, as always, we have the articulated jaw, which works really nicely. You can see kind of a nice purplish coloration in there. Very realistic tones of color. You can also see the tongue right there, which almost appears to have a little bit of a darker purple on the tongue, which is really cool to see. A little color variation inside the mouth. You can't really get in there too far, but the figure is very small, so you're not really going to get too far in the mouth of this ceratopsian just because that mouth is so tiny. Moving back here into the neck, just like we saw in the face, lots of color variation included. You have some nice brown stripes, some nice black stripes, kind of like some dark blue stripes, and another brown. You can see a really nice dark wash included down here on the underside of the neck. I love this right here, just the way that wash is included, bringing all that scale detail out beautifully, but just generally looks extremely realistic. You can also see really nice detailing within the neck, as well as kind of the structure of the neck. You can also see the throat here, as well as some skin wrinkles here in the chest region. Moving back into the body, you can pick up on the shoulder blade quite nicely right there. You can continue to see those nice stripes that run down the course of the body and how nicely applied that paint application is. As I turn it, you can see that it really does look like body color and not just paint on a figure. Moving down here into the front leg, you can see the very nice muscle tone included. I love this area as well, as far as the way that scale detail is brought out, and again, in an extremely realistic way. Beautiful foot sculpt, nicely dry brushed over top to bring out the detail of the scoots there on the toes, as well as those really nicely painted nails with a grayish coloration that are glossed very realistically, giving it that realistic shine that nails really would have. Gorgeous detailing back here in the stomach region, a few kind of skin folds and everything showing up here. Incredible scale detail here on the underside, brought out yet again with that really nice wash. It just looks like, almost looks like it's a dirty animal, which is exactly what you would probably find on a real ceratopsian, but I think it's just so perfectly painted there on the underside. You can also see the cloaca back here. Kind of noticed that little white spot there poking out at me, but that is the cloaca included right there. You can also see the hip bone really nicely elaborated right there. Beautiful thigh muscle and calf muscle included. In the rear of the leg, some more really nice paint variations, some nice dry brushing that's been given to this area. And again, you could just see so much paint. I love the paint application of this figure specifically. Definitely might be one of my favorites as far as the paint scheme and the actual paint application goes. Beautiful detailing as we lead down the leg. Another really nice foot sculpt here in the back. The nails are painted perfectly yet again. Very nice gloss coat added to them. Some more skin folds and everything going up back into the tail. And I love that the tail transitions to this very beautiful blue. Actually, a few different variations of blue, but it's just a flashy way to kind of end the figure right there. I really, really love that choice of like transitioning to that blue out here on the tail. And you can continue to see how the stripes continue down the body, but then they all transition to that nice blue and a really dark blue when we get to the tip of the tail. Some more really nice scale detail here on the tail as well. You can also see some ridges that kind of run along the spinal column of our Zuniceratops. The detailing here on the back of the frill also looks really good. Nice dark browns used back there. And then we can see that the opposing side is pretty much the same as the previous side. Again, being an articulated figure like this, showing up in a totally neutral position. It's really up to you to then position the body of the figure and display the figure. But you can see that the detailing, sculpt, paint, everything looks phenomenal on both sides of this figure, just like every single one of these ceratopsians have looked so far, so I'm really excited about this one. This one definitely is an extremely pleasing figure overall in both sculpt and paint, and even the smaller size is really cool as well, so I am definitely a big fan of the Zuniceratops. As far as articulation goes, we of course have the articulation in the neck, which works perfectly, just like each and every ceratopsian has so far. Again, you have an area right here and right here as far as the articulation goes, so you have two spots in the neck which allow perfect posability as far as that neck goes. You also have the articulated jaw, which we have looked at previously, also works beautifully. Then you have articulation in the shoulder right there, the elbow, and the wrist area, so three spots right there in the front leg. Then some articulation in the midsection of the Zuniceratops, as well as articulation in the hip, in the knee, and 2 spots down here in the ankle area. And then, of course, articulation here in the tail, which can actually swivel, allowing you just tons of possibility as far as displaying your figure. So on top of a gorgeous sculpt and gorgeous paint, you have some gorgeous articulation. As far as a size goes, for a length on the Zuniceratops, from the snout to the tail, you're looking at roughly around the 8-inch range, or about 20 centimeters. And then for a height, for the positioning that it's currently in, the highest point is obviously the frill. You are looking at about 3 3/4 inches, or about 9.5, closing in on 10 centimeters, somewhere around that range. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon next to the Zuniceratops from the Beast of the Mesozoic Ceratopsian series. And you can see next to these figures here, especially if you've been following along with these reviews since the initial Ceratopsian series review, you'll know that this is definitely the smallest of the bunch, as most figures have actually looked quite large in comparison to Mr. Papo Rex, but the Zuniceratops does not. This one definitely looks a good bit smaller in comparison to the previous figures. And to also show you a size, there are the Styracosaurus and juvenile Centrosaurus of the Beasts of the Mesozoic Ceratopsian series next to the Zuniceratops. And you can see, as far as the Centrosaurus goes, this was definitely one of the smallest ones previously. There are a few that are similar to this size range, but you can see that the Zuniceratops is even significantly smaller in comparison to that one. But then the Styracosaurus, which isn't the biggest, but it's one of the bigger Ceratopsian series, you can really see next to the Styracosaurus, again, the smaller size of this very nice Zuniceratops. So this Beast of the Mesozoic Ceratopsian series Zuniceratops is an incredibly beautiful figure, just like everyone has been so far. And I remember saying numerous reviews ago that this was going to be a continuing trend, that I was just going to keep telling you guys on repeat that these figures are amazing, and guess what? That is exactly what has occurred the entire time, as we now only have one more review left of these Beast of the Mesozoic Ceratopsian series figures for Wave 1, and I have complete confidence that that figure as well is going to be fantastic. But again, this Zuniceratops, gorgeous as far as the sculpt goes. There's pretty much no area on this figure that wouldn't be considered highly detailed, as the scale detail, the skin texture, the skin wrinkles, everything is just beautifully present and extremely well done. Very nice vibrant scale detail on all of these figures as well. Sometimes you'll get like a figure that just has kind of like a washed out appearance to the sculpt, and the detail's there, but it's just not that nice. That is not at all what you find with these Ceratopsians. All of these figures have such beautiful detail, and the detail really pops on each and every one of them. And then as far as the paintwork goes as well, this is definitely one of my favorites, I think, as far as the paintwork goes, because there are so many different tones of color included on this figure, but they are all really nice, realistic tones of color that I think honestly could be the coloration, especially with having kind of a duller, darker appearance, but a brighter, flashy appearance, somehow managing to take both of those and kind of combine them into one figure, which is just almost baffling to me how that works, but it really does work, and it works perfectly on this figure as far as the paint scheme goes. Two areas specifically that I really love as far as the actual paint scheme goes is the really nice coloration up there on the frill with the many different variations of like red, orange, and yellow. It looks beautiful and really highlights the entire head sculpt, I think, of the figure. And then you have that fantastic transition there at the end of the tail to that beautiful blue coloration, which I think really just makes the entire thing have a very flashy appearance, but again in a really nice, very natural way. I also actually quite like the paint application of the horns as well. I know I said two places, but I really love the paint application of the horns, as they're beautifully weathered and very realistic looking. And then if you take all of that and combine that with the fact that this figure is highly articulated, allowing pretty much any pose that you would like to pose the figure in as a possibility, this figure again is a complete win. So if you would like to pick this up, I will include a link in the description to where you could pick this up on the Creative Beast Studio website. So make sure you check the description, go buy this fantastic Zuniceratops from the Beast of the Mesozoic Ceratopsian series, and make sure you also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.